George, are you a sweet tooth or more a savoury and salty tooth sort of person?
I'm definitely savoury, and because I do like my lamb, and there's lots of great barbecue meats that need to be salted.
Yeah.
I do like salt. But I have to say to you that there was a phase in my life where I was spooked away from having too much salt and scared that I cut it down so much I started to cramp up. And so now I'm tuned into, when I'm exercising and I'm sweating, I put as much salt as what I want to taste on food, and I'm very comfortable with that.
There was a big study done within the last couple of years that looked at salt consumption around the world. I don't know how they do these things, but essentially found that something like 98% of people quite adequately regulated their salt intake according to what their body was telling them, in as much as how much they needed.
So I was in that
self-regulation really does work very, very well.
Good to hear.
When we did the toxins video, we spoke about sort of too much of a thing or too little being a problem. Salt fits into that category, and it got a bad reputation. But unfortunately, like most of these simplistic public health messages, at their core, they're wrong.
Right.
When they're saying salt is a problem, it's not. Too much is a problem, and too little is as big a problem. And when they looked at this work, they found that rates of heart problems, it was almost like a U-shaped graph, that in the sweet spot, it was at its lowest, but if you had too much, which is above roughly 6 grams a day, there were issues, but hardly anybody ate that much. It was just so few people were actually consuming that amount of salt. That,
How much is 6 grams? Is it a teaspoon?
It would be a bit over a teaspoon, roughly a teaspoon.
That's quite a lot of salt.
Yeah, in one day.
But do you find a lot of processed foods have got too much salt?
They can have added salt, but they often have it in milligrams, but it does all add up.
Gotcha.
And then under 3 grams was also a problem, but yet a lot of recommendations say, and we've got to again exclude people who specifically might have high blood pressure or existing heart problems. They might have separate requirements. But under 3 grams, it wasn't also a good idea. And a lot of recommendations are for below 2.4 or even below 2 grams per day. And these are sort of official public health and other foundation recommendations. But there is no actual basis for them other than this notion, well, if too much is a problem, less must be better, and even less than that, better still. And that's driven this whole concept of saying we've got to cut out salts from our diet. Most people are not eating too much. There is a risk if we eat a lot of processed food that we may get some hidden salts. We need to be watchful. But the reality when it was tested, and they measure it by looking at how much comes out the other end, the vast majority of people actually regulated it quite correctly and didn't need to be told how many milligrams or grams to eat.
I was asking you before about salt, and I said, what does it actually do in the body? And it was actually quite fascinating what you were explaining.
Sodium chloride, which is salt, sodium is in pretty much every cell in the body, and it's particularly part of the nervous system. For those who are into their sort of, I suppose, physics, there's a sodium-potassium exchange across in the muscles and also along the nerves. So it's part of the electric circuitry of the body. So we really do need our sodium. If we don't have enough, again, we're arguably in more trouble than if we have a little bit too much. A number of roles in the body. It's one of the key building blocks within the body.
It's a key building block, and they're saying cut salt, low salt, salt is bad, and it's a key building block in the body.
So as we observed previously, oxygen is essential for life, but you can't be in an environment that has much more than 20%. Water is essential for life. If you if you're underwater, it's not a good thing either. It sounds silly, but too much of a good thing is a problem, and so is too little. But where a lot of public health messages have gone wrong is that they've assumed that if too much is a problem, too little must be good.
Yes.
Well, no, it isn't.
Actually, that seems to be a very crazy assumption across the board.
We've got to relentlessly lower everything. Well, there's a point at which we've got to stop relentlessly lowering it, particularly for people who weren't getting too much to start with. So the ability for people to regulate their own salt intake is actually pretty good, and we do it quite well without even thinking about it. We can also keep it simple. If we're drinking water, if we're eating mainly real food, if we're eating our fruits and vegetables and our meat, fish, chicken, we're not eating too much of the processed foods, you know what? We're going to regulate our salt intake. And if we're doing some regular exercise, again, we might need a little bit more, but we certainly don't always need to be drinking drink sports drinks afterwards, because they often have a lot of sugar. A bit of the salt's not a problem, but they probably have sugar that we don't need. Self-regulation works. Putting the right stuff into your body, you're pretty unlikely to go too far wrong.
I've got one question.
Yeah, mate.
Salt is not just salt. There's a whole world of different types of minerals in salt, right? Is there quality salt and salt that isn't that good for you?
You can get salt from the Himalayas these days. You can get rock salt, you can get sea salt, you can get lake salt. I probably don't really want to tell people which one to go with. I think it's fair to say if you can get pure rock or sea salt or lake salt, I suspect it's probably better than the fine powdered stuff.
Okay.
Do you have to buy really expensive imported exotic
makes
salt?
You feel good.
If it makes you feel good and you want to throw the money at it, I'm not going to tell anybody not to, but do you have to? No, I don't think you have to.
You cook a dish and say it's with Himalayan salt, it just takes it to another world of marketing. I do believe in natural things, and that's really what that's about.
Yeah.
But the processed powdered stuff is probably on the other side.
Try and steer away from it.
We hope you enjoyed the video, and if you like Healthy Minded, please subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Yeah, and share with your friends. Please put comments below whether you agree, disagree, if you've got topics you'd like for the future. And until next time, stay healthy minded.